Good morning, everyone. And today we are going to start our next webinar. And we have a panel is coming directly joining from Sri Lanka, and Dr. Muthusamy Malvaran, Harsha Govinda, and Arun Siddharth. So before I go into this further, then I will like to provide some brief introduction about the webinar. This webinar is running in parallel to United Nations Human Rights Council uh, session 46 session. So this webinar is exploring what are the real aspirations of the Tamils living in northern part of the Sri Lanka. And I am the host for this event today. I am a senior policy analyst, Ontario Centre for Policy Research, and I am also adjunct professor and the research fellow at the International Centre for Interdisciplinary Research in Law, Laurentian University, Canada. Our topic today, and we are discussing, and some are trying to build walls in Geneva. We are working towards building bridges, research in law, and our topic today, as I mentioned earlier, Sri Lanka, our topic today, and UNHRC reality. And this is the response to United Nations Human Rights Council 46th session from the Tamil civil societies in Sri Lanka. When you look at it, 46th session of United Nations Human Rights Council continuing right now in Geneva, Switzerland. UNHRC has forgotten the world's most pressing human rights concerns, such as Rohingya issue in Myanmar. I involved heavily on this project, but it is completely ignored right now. And Black Lives Matters in the United States, and military coup in Myanmar, and Iraq Kurdish conflict, Yazidi, Iraq oldest minority discrimination, Liberation Tigers of Tamil Eelam war criminal Adeli Balasingham is living in the UK freely. Those things are very important human rights matters, but Human Rights Council completely ignore these facts. Sri Lanka's president has pardoned military personnel as well as LTTE cadre. Sri Lanka has rehabilitated over 12,000 former LTTE members and successfully integrated them into the society. All Sri Lankans have welcomed the move since forgiveness is an essential principle of all religion, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Christianism and Islam in Sri Lanka. UNHRC accountability mechanism, retributive justice, does not well fit with Sri Lankan's aspiration. UNHRC resolution is proposing to prosecute former LTTE cadre and military personnel. As a policy, Ontario Centre for Policy Research and London Initiative reject such recommendations since it will affect the reconciliation process. Sri Lankan pro-LTTE Tamil diaspora luxuriously living in Canada, USA, and other Western countries advocate accountability only for death, LTTE cadre, and completely forgot and abandoned aspiration of the Tamil living in North Sri Lanka. Their pressing concerns such as housing, land issues, education, jobs, and infrastructure development have been completely ignored. Pro-LTTE groups are interested in building monuments, rallies, parades, and commemoration of death LTTE cadre, but not Tamils' welfare in North Sri Lanka. Since the armed conflict has ended, the pro-LTTE Tamil diaspora has not supported a building even single school, hospital, or drinking water facilities for Tamils in North. their primary purpose of influencing asylum policies to continue their human trafficking business. It has been reported that LTT operatives ran asylum factories in Canada and United Kingdom and other Western countries. The unity among Tamils and majority Sinhalese and other communities is an obstacle for the pro-LTT campaign against Sri Lanka. Today's webinar explores the real aspiration of North Tamils in Sri Lanka and support reconciliation and development efforts. In addition to that, this webinar is in conjunction with, we organized with the London Initiative, United Kingdom. I am very much acknowledge support of Solicitor Jayaraj Palihawadana from United Kingdom, convener of the London Initiative, and others who are now very hard working at the Geneva at the moment, team and promoting reconciliation, unity and ethnic harmony in Geneva too. Then I would like to introduce our first speaker, Harsha Govind, founder of School of Civil Aeronautical Club, Jaffna Central College. And Capt.Harsha Govind, a professional aviator and a qualified theoretical instructor of transport pilot, licensed for both airplanes and helicopters by Civil Aviation Authority of Sri Lanka. He also certified theoretical instructor of European Aviation Safety Agency. He is a founder of Ravana Aviation Academy, an institute providing professional education to national and international flying students. Also, Harsha takes pride in introducing aviation archaeology to Sri Lanka. Harsha is a graduate of Kotalawala Defence Academy. He served to Sri Lanka as a helicopter pilot in Sri Lanka Air Force from 1997 to 2010. Harsha obtained postgraduate diploma in archaeology from University of Kelaniya. Currently, he is reading master's degree in archaeology and the archaeology at the University of Kelaniya. May I invite Harsha Govinda?
Thank you very much, Dr. Nabil. Ayubowan, Vanakkam, Assalamu alaikum, and good morning, those who are participating from Western countries. Good afternoon, those who are participating from European countries, and good evening to you, those who are participating from South Asian countries. My topic is Dostics for Tamils and the UNHRC reality. Before that, starting this presentation, I would like to give small briefing of myself. I do not represent any political parties or any politician or political leaders in Sri Lanka. I am a responsible citizen of Sri Lanka. Based on that, I would like to request a small request from you. Whatever you gain up to now, the knowledge, you can just keep it away and just listen to my presentation. And after that, you may have a lot of questions. Yes, of course, end of this presentation or at the time given for the question and answer sessions. So you may clarify. Now, this is my presentation outline and the grievances. We know that the words are concepts. The concepts itself, you have many meaning. So here, what I did, I extracted the meaning of Oxford dictionary. So grievance, it's given the meaning of something that you think is unfair and that you complain or protest about, a feeling that you have been badly treated. So here, aspiration, again, is saying that a strong desire to have or do something. I didn't realize you had a political aspiration. You can see that these two words is a total difference meaning. And here, the Tamil-speaking Sri Lankans grievances, we know that these are the main thing. We can see unintended consequences of government policies, cascading impacts of civil war, and perception of the being excluded, fueled by the observation and the magnification by certain Tamil and the Sinhala political leaders. Root causes: the language barriers, miscommunication between Sinhalese and the Tamils, lack of national policies in Sri Lanka to address socio-economic political issues. Now, after 1983, the civil war, the 1983 is all we are knowing that is the Black July. The main focal point added, other than the previous common grievances that they had in their loving ones, lives absorbed by the civil war and repercussions. The full-scale escalations of the civil war erupted in 1983 with the assassinations of 13 soldiers by LTTE in July 1983. Subsequent mob violence against Tamils by certain elements within Sinhala community. The misreading and mishandling of the situation by the government. The grievances of general public of Sri Lanka other than North and East. So we have to consider, before 1983 escalations of civil war, Tamils in Northeast face same socio-economic political challenges as the majority of Sinhalas in the South. 50% of Tamil-speaking population was settled down outside the Northeast, living among majority Sinhalese in harmony. Sporadic event of ethnic tension time to time did not disturb peace. Now, after 1983 escalation of civil war, main focal point added, other than the previous common grievances they had, is their loving ones' lives absorbed by civil war and repercussions, the same as the Northeast. Now, when you come to this Tamil-speaking Sri Lankan grievances, so here, even more fundamental to the understanding is to delineate between grievances of the everyone and unfulfilled aspiration of the some, in reference to Sri Lankan Tamil community in the last 100 years. So it is ironic we embark on this reflection as a key year pertinent to our discussion approaches 100th years anniversary. Tamil-speaking Sri Lankan aspiration now. It is worthwhile to see how it started by looking at the last time when there wasn't a major Sinhala and Tamil ideological division on political in Sri Lanka. Hence, we end up at two important years in our quest. Findings: the Tamil-speaking Sri Lankan politicians' aspiration. One is 1911, when Sri Lankan, then Ceylon, held its first election to elect the only elected members of Legislative Council of Ceylon, with the voting population being around 3,000 majority. Being Sinhalese, the contest was between Marcus Fernando and the Ponnambalam Ramanathan, and Ramanathan was the eventually winner despite being an ethnic Tamil. This is the Gazette of Ceylon. Now, the Ceylon government gazetted on 22nd December 1911, Legislative Council member as a Ponnambalam Ramanathan. Now, he is one of the national hero of Sri Lanka. The second event was in 1990, the Ceylon National Congress, the only national political movement of Sri Lanka, elected Ponnambalam Arunachalam as its first president. Both these events, an election of ethnic Tamil by majority Sinhala speaking Sri Lankans votes, is significant, as these two bureaucratic titles are the equivalent to the presidency of Sri Lanka in today's terms. Now, he also one of the national hero of Sri Lanka. Then it is clear that Sinhala people were willing to elect qualified and respected Tamils to head Sri Lanka even until 1990. However, when we observe history, we see the first schism between Sinhala and Tamil political leaders in 1923. Following the results of 1921 Legislative Council election, where no Tamils were elected for Western Province, the Tamil politicians demanded British rulers to add a special seat for Tamils in the Western Province. And when it was not done, Ponnambalam Arunachalam himself and Tamil leaders left Ceylon National Congress and founded Ceylon Tamil League in 1923. This is the Gazette. You can see Ceylon government gazetted on 29th April 1921, Western Province Legislative Council member. No Tamils representatives were there. For all intended purposes, the year 1923 may denote the real separation of Tamil-speaking and Sinhala-speaking Sri Lankan political movements that over the years graduated into unfortunate civil war, which claimed lives of hundreds of thousands of Sri Lankans over many decades. It begs the logical questions. What was the origin of this division is 1923, a grievance or an unfulfilled aspiration. The reasons for this divide was that Tamil were unable to elect a member in 1921 Legislative Council election. The solution was for them to work hard and find candidates that can win the vote of Sinhala and Tamil. Instead, Tamil leaders tried an easy way out by changing rules to ensure Tamil representation and failed. Now, when you come to Tamil-speaking Sri Lankan aspiration, other than the politician, under those observations, it can safely deduce that the real origin of the great political divide between Sinhala and Tamil-speaking Sri Lankan sprung from none other than an unfulfilled aspiration of Tamil-speaking Sri Lanka, some leaders 100 years ago, not the Tamil general public. This doesn't mean that Tamil-speaking general public doesn't have legitimate grievances. They certainly do have major grievances on education, jobs, housing, medical facilities, infrastructure, etc. The truth that is often forgotten that those are the very same grievances of rural Sinhala population too. Now, when you come to aspiration of the general public of Sri Lanka, so both in one count. In essence, the Sinhala-speaking and Tamil-speaking general public do share major grievances, but the rise of the separatism and the armed insurgency of Tamil separatist movement does not trace back to those grievances, but points to a singular political miscalculation in 1923 based in the unfulfilled aspiration by some Tamil-speaking political leaders of Sri Lanka. Now, discussion. The UNHRC, the proposed 2021 UNHRC resolution on Sri Lanka and the cascading bureaucratic process needs to be evaluated based on three main aspects in order to qualitative assessment of the merit and demerit of such an action by the international community at this juncture. It is an accepted fact that as a world organization established to safeguard the democracy and basic human rights all over the world, the UNHRC does have the responsibility to look into specific occurrences that has come to its attention to be properly addressed by the nations in concern with necessary operational infrastructure and legal framework by its members countries. However, if it is a fair process based on the principles of UNHRC enshrined in the United Nations Organization objectives is not followed, it may introduce a risk that the adverse effects of a resolution may outweigh the benefits. The three aspects needs to be considered with the reference to above context. Firstly, the UNHRC resolution of Sri Lanka is pivoted against the ending of a civil war, which ended 11 years ago. While it may point to some instance happened in Sri Lanka after 2009, the root cause of those actions can always certainly be traced back to an occurrence or occurrences happened during the time of Sri Lankan civil war, a battle between a terrorist group, the LTTE, which waged an armed insurgency based on a separatist ideology, and the military force of Sri Lanka government. While there may be some merit of making Sri Lanka government responsible on the single-handedly to the remedial work, the time lapse has to be a serious consideration as the main focus of United Nations organization and its subsidiary bodies is future and not going back to realize decades old instances where the veracity and the accuracy of the evidentiary material available at the present is questionable at best. Given the root cause analysis of these instances point to the civil war, it becomes a challenge to identify any one party to be held accountable, as it is a fact that in complex localized situations as such, there are often multiple causes and multiple results. This will be a segue to the next aspect will need to be considered. Secondly, there are varied explanations on what happened during the civil war of Sri Lanka and during its final days. It will be a near impossible task to ascertain factually who will be responsible for the instances highlighted. While one party can produce evidence, those facts will be circumstantial evidence at best, and hence will be susceptible to be disproved by new facts. By saying so, it is not inferred that humanitarian disasters and the crimes didn't occur in Sri Lankan civil war and its last phase. As it would be common for any military battle, civil war or international conflicts, Sri Lankan civil war, it riddled with the massive volume of tragedies impacting all parties, Sinhala, Tamil and Muslim civilians, public officials, military of government of Sri Lanka, and even LTTE and its supporters. In fact, despite being a civil war, the pain and the suffering went beyond the shores of the island of Sri Lanka, including India, where even the Prime Minister of the world's largest democracy becoming a victim of LTTE bomb attack, thus making LTTE the only terrorist group in modern history that has assassinated democratically elected heads of state of two countries, Sri Lanka and India. However, to pinpoint and finding one part in these 30 years conflict for any singular event will be impossible. And if it does, it will only by circumventing the due process, which UNHRC would never do as a rule-based organization based on those strong principles. And on the point of subsequent, even highlighted in the UNHRC resolution after 2009, are mere outcome if events happen before 2009. And the proper solution to the root cause will be the only viable and sustainable solution. Thirdly, and most importantly, it begs the question, what is the objective of UNHRC to have this resolution thrust on Sri Lanka government? The Sri Lanka government has already started in no uncertain terms that it does not welcome this UNHRC resolution and wishes to engage with the UNHRC with a more productive, future-oriented reform in the country. Hence, it is conceivable that any UNHRC resolution, if succeeds, will be a supreme position of a resolution against the will of the Sri Lanka government. It is worth mentioning that. Possibly asking a sovereign nation to agree to the term of the stronger international group only succeed in short run and can easily backfire and deliver exact opposite results in the long run. So I would like to take example, Treaty of the Versailles in 1990, which was possibly thrust on German against its will after World War I, eventually created deep-rooted sentiments in Germany, which was later exploited by extremist elements, which overpowered democratic establishment, paving the way to uprising of Nazi Germany and more widespread destruction via World War II. Any study of the international relations today terms that singling out German against it was a wrong strategic move by the Allied power. On the other hand, there is a historical evidence that the more nuanced, that collaborative approach against a sovereign nation, even in situations the nation is responsible for certain atrocities, can bring about long-term stability and prosperity to the nation's region and the world. So here I would like to take the example of 1951 San Francisco summit, where similar to 1990 Treaty of Versailles, the initial inclination of the summit was to force heavy reparation on Japan, which lost World War II and responsible for many atrocities. But the summit leaders wisely opted not to force it on Japan, instead getting Japan to agree to a more collaborative international agreement. As a result, Japan not only never waged another war, but recovered its economy by forcing its resources on economic development and became an economic superpower in a few decades, playing a major part in global economic growth. It is not suggested Sri Lanka will be a global player of a caliber of Germany or Japan. No, that Sri Lanka government is under an illusion of its place in international politics. However, in essence, the choice of UNHRC today has a certain resemblance to the two options similar to Treaty of Versailles for the solutions and the risks of the backfiring, and the San Francisco summit enter into the pragmatic multi-party agreement and the work for future prosperity. The Sri Lanka government welcomed in spirit and action the involvement of the UNHRC and other organizations to collaboratively find way to move forward towards political, social, economic development of Sri Lanka and in extension the South Asian region, ensuring a peaceful democratic region that will continue to play a vital role in world politics with a mutual respect. However, the UNHRC resolution in its current form, which can only be thrust on Sri Lanka government by external diplomatic force, will not be sustainable or advisable course of action. And Sri Lanka government hopes that UNHRC will eventually consider this and work with the Sri Lanka government to collaboratively draft a new resolution, which is more future-oriented, following a more open, fair process. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We have about 20 questions came through online, and in addition to that, we have another questions came online through the email. So this is the time to put the question in live, and so now our next question is to Capt.Harsha Govinda, and so we have about for you, I believe. So my assistants they gave us about 54 questions for you. But anyhow, I will pick first few questions. That question came from Arun Kumar from France, and he asking, you are one of the professions in Sri Lanka. You represent the field of aviation. So how do you inputs as the founder of School Aviation Club in Northern Province consider as a part of reconciliation program in Sri Lanka?
Thank you very much for the question. first of all, I would like to tell you that I didn't do any reconciliation program. I am individual person, but I am responsible Sri Lankan citizen. And what I want to tell you here, I got my free education from Sri Lanka government. They are, apart from my loving parents in Sri Lankan, the Sinhala, Tamil and Muslims, parents, they sponsored me. So being a airline transport pilot license, that's a higher qualification for the licensing in the aviation field. I'm the theoretical instructor qualified for the Civil Aviation Authority and the European Aviation Safety Agency. So I saw that this north and east, especially in the northern province, eastern province, actually Civil Aviation Authority has started in 2000, around 2000, eight, 2017, 16. These started from that introducing these aviation, the school aviation clubs. But I haven't seen that starting in the northern province. So I started with the communication with the Civil Aviation Authority of Sri Lanka, and meantime I got communicated with the principals of northern province schools, especially center called Jaffna, St. John's College, Hindu College, and I started. So they are because now what I identify, this is this education is far away because of this cascading 3-decade war, civil war. This is very sensitive aviation field, highly technical field. But I used to introduce this domain to these students by simple way. Kite to aviation, kite dynamic and aerodynamics. What is the relationship between these? Because now you know that the after this civil war, we know this the children is very sensitive. We want to protect these students and make sure their future. The future in the sense basically the most of the students, they are trying to, in the A-level students, they are trying to get into universities, but because of our the developing country, we are in the developing country, we don't that much of facility affected by the government. So there we have to introduce for a lot of areas to develop their career. That is what I did. Other than I execute my social responsibility as a professional in Sri Lanka. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harsha. But it is a very quick question for the for other one. But please give us a quick answer. As you are but actually this question came from Chandana Amartunga from Australia, okay. Melbourne, and he's asking, as you are the founder of the school aviation club in Northern Province, do you have identified any experience to share with us while you have been engaging with Sri Lankan school children living in Northern Province?
Yes, actually what Arun said is right. You know that this education system is in Sri Lanka is very, you know that is controversial, but they are not getting more seats for the universities. You know that during my lecture sessions in the Northern Province, the students, the aviation clubs, so I frequently ask few more questions. I asked that, tell me what is your the future plan? Then they said that, Captain, sir, we want to somehow get into these universities. So I repeat that question. I ask the next question. So think about that. You are getting failed in the first attempt. What are you going to do? Sir, I'm going to try in my second attempt as well. So, okay, sadly, your second attempt is also going to fail. What are you going to do? So I am trying to third attempt. So you can identify these students have one and only option is get into universities in Sri Lanka. So I asked, then after that I asked the question to want to clarify why these students are repeatedly saying that. You know that most of the students, they are saying like that. So then they said, Captain, because our grandfathers, mother and parents, they are saying that. So if you are getting universities, definitely you can get the government job opportunities. So I I explained, that it's not since then. Once you get into universities, it's not confirmed that you are getting government jobs. So then I educated. There are so many ways to build up your career. So that is what I'm telling you now. It's very important. This sensitive issue is being with the youth of in the Sri Lanka. It's common. It's common question for all the youth. Uncertainty, but it may be manipulate some kind of that leading to some separatists of the youth in future. See, I have seen that, so we want to give the proper answer for that.
Thank you very much, and I will ask one final last question. But actually, question came from Nihal Gunaratna. Communication is the most important tool for the harmonized living. Sinhalese, Tamil, or Muslim should know the two languages fluently to be recruited to the government jobs and others. This is the good way to begin achieving this goal, and therefore both languages should be taught from the kindergarten level. Can you please, and some other question also came from one teacher from Sri Lanka, Mrs. Chandra Fernando, and she was telling, I am here in Sri Lanka and COVID-19 lockdown, waiting for my second dose for the vaccine. And but she was saying, I have traveled to North on many occasions and the work with children. I visited children combatants when they were rehabilitated at the Colombo Hindu College. I have also written the children's peace book, which has the 3 languages of each page. This is being distributed free since the war was over. The question, how can bring young people, both communities together in a real reconciliation? So there's another question came to the similar question. Everything is connected to the language barrier, but actually that question came to the Harsha, came from Germany. And he is asking, what do you think it is the best to eliminate language barrier used for misleading the general public of Sri Lanka? Do you have any proposal? So now everybody is focusing the issue as a tool to mitigate the reconciliation and peace and unity among to Tamil, Muslim and other community language as a barrier. So therefore, I will open the floor to first Harsha, then we will go to Arun, then we will go to the Dr. Malvan. Harsha, your opinion.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Now you can understand, Mr. Arun also he stated that the language barrier, how much is effect to this Sri Lankan harmony. Now, in my opinion, and actually the Sri Lanka government has taken very good positive steps, that the both end compulsory for these languages, the schools level. Now, apart from that, when you come to these Sri Lankan local oral traditions and the folklore we call, we know that we have these children's story books in the both languages. We have to make sure, other than these the matured people, they do this to net this language to break this barrier. We want to make sure this. So we can start from the children's story book translate into these both languages. Since that, Sinhala story languages, storybooks to Tamil storybooks to, and Sinhala from the stories. Now there, my father authored one good book that is said that the down south oral traditional book, and it is bring some kind of special stories. So these stories may know about this northern province and the eastern province Tamil students they have to do. So my father took the first step to make sure this language, to break the language barrier, to translate to this Tamil. So he used to make sure Royal College staff, and he did. So that is there. I would like to make sure here, state here, the one of the translator, he mentioned that his wording there. Desyati viru nadaki முழுகல் தடாய் அல்ல படியாக அமைய வேண்டும். That seeing that languages won't be a barrier to this the respective country development. So that is what I want to tell you. We have to start from the childhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So Harsha, thank you very much for what you are doing, and your aviation program is attract many youth. I believe that this youth, especially Tamil youth, they were able to find the job in aviation industry, whether they are pilot or some other technical jobs around the world. Thank you very much, everybody. And now I am officially concluded this event, and I am also very much thankful to you, all the participants who participated across the world for this webinar. I know that there are some lot of people, they're trying to log in because our seating capacity was full. But however, this video will be available on the website, so they can join and they can watch it in future. Thank you very much for everybody, and I am concluding this webinar officially. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.